right, great. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm so excited to see so many folks out with us tonight. My name is Susan McCracken. I am here in the Career Development Center. I'm the director of the Career Development Center. And my career goal is to do an internship in DC when I retire. And that's sort of a joke, but sort of not, because I never did that. And I'm very jealous of people who have done that, and those of you who are planning to do that and aspiring to do it, because it is truly a life-changing opportunity. So we have some special guests, and we're going to go ahead and jump in. And I know we have one other alum who is going to join us, who actually did also an internship in DC, worked in DC for a while, and she is now somewhere else, but she is going to join us as we go along. So what I thought we might do, because I like to know who is here, let's quickly let's have each of our panelists introduce themselves, and one of them is going to be a little late, and then maybe if y'all could just unmute yourselves really quickly, go around and tell us who you are. And just in case you're wondering, the name of this career meetup is Head to the Hill, basically strategies for how to find an internship and then get a job in DC. And I thought that was a really clever title until about 3 weeks ago, but I decided to stick with it and that it won't have negative connotations. So maybe let's start with George, and then we'll go to our alum to introduce themselves, and then we'll go to the students.
All right. Hi there, guys. My name is George. I'm with Washington Intern Student Housing. It's a pleasure to meet you guys tonight.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Michael McSwain. I graduated from Appalachian in 2010 as a finance major, and I live in Washington, D.C. and work for Nike.
And I'm Tommy Maddox. I graduated App State in 2015, and I'm currently Communications Director for Congresswoman Jennifer Wexton, and have been in D.C. since 2015.
Right. And our other person who's going to join us, who is having a longer commute than planned, is Kadima Robert, and she recently took a job at the Library of Congress. She was an econ and finance major here, and she graduated, I should know this, 2018, I believe. So she'll be popping in a little bit. But students, could y'all just quickly, because this will give us some context, if you could just quickly we know your name, but tell us your name again. If you would like to share your pronouns when you do your introduction, that'd be great. If you would let us know what your major is and what area you might be interested in interning or working in DC. And that will give us context on things that we want to share with you. So y'all just go however you want to go.
I can start. I'm Ben. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm a first-year political science major, and I love policy and like working with representatives and like on fine-tuning policy and like what is the best for like both their constituencies and also like the country.
I can go next. So I'm Alexia. I'm a senior criminal justice international studies major, currently in the process of looking for an internship. And I think because I'm an international like concentration, I think I would love to do something with like foreign affairs or anything like that. But I'd also love to work for a representative or any sort of committee. I just really want to be a part of something that can make good change, and because I don't think I'll ever run for myself, but if I can be a part of someone that can represent the whole, I'd love to do.
My name is Rachel. I'm a psychology major, and I'm looking into going into the environmental field. So I was looking into an internship in environmental policy.
I guess I can go next. My name is Ella. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am a sophomore global studies major and a French minor, and I'm super interested in public policy, specifically as it relates to women's rights and public health.
I'm Mel, and I am an English poli-sci double major, and I'm very interested in like working for like immigration reform and stuff.
My name's Maddie. I'm a senior international political science major, and I'm really interested in international business or international relations, something like that. Also, maybe like public affairs consulting type of thing.
My name's Leonardo. I'm majoring in psychology, and currently I'm interested in a large variety of things. So I joined just out of curiosity's sake to see if something catches my interest.
Well, that's the best way to explore. We're glad you're here.
Hi, my name's Peyton. I'm a junior political science and international comparative politics major. I'm really wanting to go into like the State Department or the Foreign Service.
Let's see. Is there anybody else that wants to share what they're interested in, or we'll go ahead and jump in? And Kadima, glad you're here.
Hi.
Great. Okay. All right. Sorry, I unmuted myself. Thank you all for sharing what you're interested in. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Grant, we're just doing introductions and telling people what area we're interested in.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Sorry about that. I ended up sort of overbooking myself, so I have to call into this call from the car.
Okay.
So, what
the question is, what area would you be interested in working as an intern or as a full-time job in DC, just so we'll have more context?
Oh, I would personally be interested in like, first of all, my name is Grant. Hello, everyone. But I would personally be interested in like policy analysis, especially with foreign policy.
Okay, great. All right. So as we go through this evening, just pop up if you have a question. That would be great. If everyone would not mind, all the ASU students, if y'all don't mind putting your names in the chat box, that would be really helpful to me. And then I will know you're here and I'll be able to send you any follow-up information. So we wanted to set this up. We have, George works with an organization called WISH, and that is an acronym for Washington Intern Student Housing. It is an organization, and he's going to tell you about it, that Appalachians had a relationship for probably at least 15 years, maybe a little bit longer than that. So we're going to have George talk about the opportunities that his organization presents, and then we're going to do more of a panel discussion with Michael, Tommy, and Kadima. And then we will definitely have time for Q&A. As we go along, I'll stop and ask for that, and then we'll have more time at the end. Okay, so George, I'm going to turn it to you.
Perfect. So a little bit about WISH. We began a little over October. They began buying properties across DC to provide a safe housing option for students arriving here in DC. And now 25 years later, we have various properties across Capitol Hill, Woodley Park, Chinatown, you know, you name it, and we probably have a property close by there. And so that's a little bit about us and what we do. And so about our properties, for the summer. And so, like I mentioned, are very close, especially the congressional and a few other of our Capitol row houses. They're within walking distance, not only to Senate buildings and you know, like a congressional building, but, you know, there are entities across DC, whether, you know, that, you know, just steps within the Supreme Court and the Capitol building, whenever that decides to open up. And then our Woodley Park campus, and all of our properties are metro accessible. You know, they're you know, like mere multiple housing points. And so one of our other notable properties, Woodley Park, that's about a 5-minute walk to the metro, and then about, depending on where you want to go and I guess where you're interning and how, or interning and working, you know, it's usually a 20 to 30-minute metro commute. And that property, you know, it's close to Georgetown. If you're kind of interested in, you know, that area, it's about a 7-minute walk to the National Smithsonian Zoo. And then another notable property would be our Chinatown, which is just like right Chinatown. And so, you know, all of our properties are metro accessible. Accessible to so many amenities across DC, whether that's, you know, your local grocery store or to some historical monument. You know, there's something for everybody here at WISH. And so a little bit about, I guess, how to apply to WISH and what that process looks like. And so you can apply on our website, internsdc.com. I'll drop that down in the chat below in a couple minutes. And so you just send an application there, and there you should see a application tablet where you can just fill out your information. I know some of you guys are, you know, still looking for internships, but, you know, might be looking at housing options. And so, you know, if we have a specific section where it asks for like coordinator names, numbers, and emails, and, you know, for that sort of stuff, you can kind of put TBD. And also within the application, you can put your preferred housing. And so, you know, you can, or, you know, if you have a specific property in mind, you can put that as well. Currently on our website, we'll only have about 3 properties listed, but for the summer, we're planning on opening. And after you submit a application, and the application is totally free, and so you guys don't have to worry about, you know, application fees or, you know, none of that stuff. And so it's completely free to apply, to inquire for information. And also, but a little bit about that, we have a $200 deposit, which is refundable at the end of the semester. And we also are waiving our processing fee for the summer. And so typically that'd be $300. And so really the only like deposit you have to pay is that $200 deposit. What you want. So we have doubles for $3,600, and that's for virtually all of our properties, and singles for $4,200. And so it'll just, if it's a single option, it will just be depending on the property. If it's in Capitol Hill, it might look like you'd have your own studio, or you'd be in a single room and just be yourself in a bedroom, and then you would have to share just any common areas. And for a double, that would essentially look like it'd be 2 people in a room, and no more than 2 in accordance with COVID. And it would just be you 2 in addition to whomever's in the building or in the apartment sharing those common areas. And a little bit about our amenities as well. So we do have free laundry on site. And so that's washer, dryer. We have free Wi-Fi, free cable. All of our properties are fully furnished, and so, you know, you don't have to worry about buying a couch or, you know, buying a bed. We provide most, if not all, of those stuff, and including, you know, pots and pans, plates, cups, you know, utensils. Really, the only thing you would have to bring is just, some clothes and some bedding and sheets. And, there might be an occasional, appliance or two, which we don't provide, such as a blender. But aside from that, we really try to accommodate all of your needs. And so in regards to our internships, and so currently our WISE program, I guess, how should I say it? It's currently not available at the moment. And so it typically, a student would apply to our WISE program, and through there we would help them, with their resumes, preparing for interviews, and, like really helping them secure an internship in DC. But with COVID, some programs, just aren't available at the moment. But obviously we're here to help you guys. And so, we're more than welcome to help you, whether, it's taking a look at a resume, whether it's, helping you connect or network with different individuals. And we also have events as well. I have an events list right here, and just some notable ones that I have for this semester, and most likely continuing to next semester. We have resume workshops, we have career panels where you get to speak with individuals working on the Hill, and, like inquiring about, how they got their jobs, and, how to turn an internship into a full-time job. And not only that, but, we try to accommodate, like a different variety of fields, from, different congressional representatives to nonprofits. I think a notable one that I have for this semester is Lauren Underwood from Illinois, from the 14th district. We have her as a speaker. And so, we try to provide as many opportunities for students to connect with, different people across various fields, to, really, engage them and, help them in their career as well. And so, and also WISH itself has an internship program, where students, get to work with the WISH team and, coordinate different events, coordinate, like work alongside different representatives, and, like really, getting that hands-on experience in a variety of fields. But sadly, that as well is currently unavailable for the summer semester. But again, we really try to help the students here at WISH, those in DC, or even, thinking about coming to DC. And any other questions?
Yeah, any questions that folks have for George? WISH housing and the WISH program is year round, as he mentioned. So while things may be somewhat limited now, if, say, Ben, you're a first year student, in 2 years, it'll be, I expect, a very different world. Great. Okay. So if you do have questions, put them in the chat. We'll come back. George, are you going to stick around with us, or are you going to have to hop off?
I'll stick around for a couple minutes.
Okay. Okay, great. And do you mind, do you want people just to go to the WISH website, or do you want to share your email in the chat box?
Yeah, I'll be more than happy to provide my contact information, office hours, my number. I'll make sure to drop all that information for you guys. Okay,
great. Thank you. Thank you. So as Michael put in the chat box, if you are not familiar with DC, all of the neighborhoods may seem really overwhelming. And he said, we alums will give you tips when it's time. One thing I want y'all to know, and hopefully, our panelists will talk a little bit about this. There are a ton of App State alumni in DC, and people are generally will bend over backwards, do backflips, whatever, to get you engaged. Our App State alumni chapter for the DC area has generally been one of the more active chapters, where there are a lot of events and social activities that they plan. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. You're never very far away from somebody who's willing to reach out and help you. So let's go ahead and jump into our panel. As I mentioned, Kadima is with us now. She was a few minutes late because of work. And Kadima, you're actually going to work, right? No, you're still remote.
Yeah, so right now we're remote. Only people that are really allowed in the building are like super essential personnel and people that have to like look after the collections. And with like the recent events a couple weeks ago, they've really like shut down a lot. So we haven't been able, like no one's really allowed in the Capitol complex right now.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and start with you. So if each of our panelists would just give a brief, the 3-minute elevator pitch about maybe what you did here at App, how you got to DC. Each of you got there in somewhat different ways. And the one thing that I want our students to hear is that being successful in DC requires you to put your ego in your back pocket and say, I'm going to be here and I'm going to do whatever it takes to be here. Nobody shows up. Actually, I put a quote in we do a daily check-in with our staff, and I put in a quote this morning from Amy Klobuchar. She said, when I was an intern for Vice President Mondale, I was ready to start writing policy memos, and my first task was to inventory the furniture in the office. And she was probably really happy to have that kind of internship and that kind of responsibility. So, so if each of y'all could talk a little bit about what your path was and sort of how you got where you are and what you're doing right now, that would be great. And Kadima, let's start with you.
Okay, fine. Well, hi everyone. My name's Kadima. I've been in the DMV area for about, I think we're reaching 3 years now, because I'm like 3 years. I graduated from App State in May of 2018, and I came straight up here. So I've been here ever since. Currently, I work as a budget analyst with the Library of Congress. So the library, that's like where you go when you want to look at the Declaration of Independence, and you want to see any of like the really cool documents from like, George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, like the Gettysburg Address, all that stuff. So we're the library that houses all those collections. We do all the research for congressional members. So anytime they need information on certain policies or they're looking up certain topics, they go to a division in our library called the Congressional Research Service. And so they take care of the Congress members and their staffers and the clerks and whatever they need. What was the other part that I was supposed to talk about, Susan?
So did you was that your first job when you got to,
no, that was
you
not.
landed that right out of right as a graduate from App.
Oh, no, that was not my first job. So I started out kind of like down the public administration path with my Marion Drain Scholars Program internship that I did in the summer of 2017. So that was with UNCG, and it was like a group of us that was like 6 of us, and we did research studies and policy studies, and we got to travel to DC for like a couple days, and we were able to like visit Capitol Hill, go into some of the Senate buildings, and that like really kind of like spurred an interest in me wanting to move up here and like, really find a position in the public sector. And so after like really diligently applying to everything that was possibly open, I found an internship with a contractor that worked for the government and doing data analytics. So I did that for my first summer here. And then from there, I moved into a financial analyst role with another contractor that specified in like IT work for different government agencies. And then recently, back in September, I got the budget analyst role. So I'm fairly new in my position, but it took a few years to kind of really get into this space where now I feel like I'm really doing what I moved up here to do. So it was a long road, but I achieved. Is there anything else?
I want to put the link in for the Marion, is it Drain or Drain?
Yeah, Marion Drain Graham Scholars, MDG is usually the acronym, but it's Marion Drain.
So
scholars.
Yeah, and they are accepting applications for that right now, and I'm going to find it and handshake and put it in the chat box for y'all.
Yeah, it was definitely a great experience. It was about 6 weeks, and they you stay at NC State. Well, when I did it, you stayed at NC State, and you got to have like an internship with like a North Carolina government agency. So I was with the Water Resources Division. And then there was a couple people that, like another girl, she was with Veterans Affairs. There was somebody else that was working in like a communications department. And then with that, you also got to do like a research project on the policy. Like you picked any kind of policy at your school and you did like research on that topic. And then you had a hard presentation. And then we also had the trip to DC where we got to come up here and visit. We met with North Carolina senators. I think it was Tom Tillis and someone else, I can't remember right now, but whoever was in the seat at the time, we got to meet with them, talk to them about literally whatever. And that would also have been a moment, like if you wanted to kind of go straight into being like a staffer, they would have let you know if they had opportunities available and you would have been able to like kind of get your foot in the door. So it was super cool. I suggest for you guys to apply.
Great, thank you. And actually, the person who oversees that program at the General Administration for the UNC system was at the Internships Expo today. So if any of y'all were there, you may have seen her. I put the link in the chat box. So Tommy, you also did multiple things to get to the role that you have. So tell us about your journey. And maybe even because your journey, I think is, I mean, your journey started even before you came to Appalachian. So talk a little bit about the work that you did before you even came here.
Yeah, definitely. So I always say that I'm probably the only former Disney World character performer that is now a communications director on Capitol Hill. So yeah, I took a few years off school and was a performer down at Disney even before I came to App State. And then when I joined or was a student at App, I was fairly involved, pretty involved. And one of the things I was involved in was student government. And I was director of governmental affairs my senior year. And I've got to tell y'all, Susan McCracken is the best resource to have for anything DC. So she definitely helped get my foot in the door. But like Kadima said, it's a lot of hard work and networking involved in DC. So to give you an idea, when I first came up here in 2015, it was when there were probably no paid internships on the Hill. I mean, this is even before Bernie was paying his interns $15 an hour. So I definitely did, I started off interning in the Senate, unpaid, and then, oh, there's our photo. But I was waiting tables at night to be able to afford, yeah, 2015. I was waiting tables at night to be able to afford to stay in DC because DC is very expensive. But I had the drive, and I always say you can't teach drive, but if you have it and you have the motivation, especially if you really want to work in politics, you know, put in the extra mile, and I promise you it'll pay off. So I was interning 5 years ago, and now I'm in press as a press intern, and now I'm a communications director in just that short amount of time. So if you're willing to put in the work, I promise you it's worth it. Because I did a few internships in the Senate, and to give you an idea about networking, so my second internship on the Hill was with Senator Carper of Delaware, and I applied, didn't think I had a shot. Well, next thing I know, I had an interview and I got it, and I met the senator, and he informed me that his wife, Martha, is from Boone, North Carolina. And so that was one of the reasons that my resume was flagged. So it is all about networking and hard work. So after my internships on the Hill, I went over to Politico for about 1.5 years. And there I was executive assistant to the editor-in-chief. It was never a dull moment, but I really want to get back on the Hill. And another thing about all of you that are interested in policy, I always thought I wanted to do policy too. When I came to DC, I was a political science major, English minor, and I quickly found that I really enjoyed press because you get to kind of oversee all the issue areas for your member or the committee and get to know a little bit about a lot, and you're constantly learning. And I always joke, my mom is in HR, and she always said, what are you gonna do with a political science degree and English minor? And now I'm like, well, I write speeches for members of Congress, so I think I can't, you know, utilize that any more than I am right now. But, you know, working hard, before this job, I was press secretary for the House Agriculture Committee. I didn't have any ag experience, but that gives you an idea of, you know, you're just constantly learning something new and being able to write a speech for a member on these ag issue areas. You know, you're working with your policy team and you're getting to learn something new every day. And now I get to work for Congresswoman Wexton of Northern Virginia. And every day it's been, well, this past month especially, it's been crazy, but it's probably the most exciting time professionally I've ever had, but I've never forgotten my app roots, and I'm more than happy to be a resource to any of you.
Great, great. Tommy, thank you. I mean, you have just stayed so focused on what you've wanted, which is very cool. Michael, tell us about from your, extraterrestrial kind of planet view there. Tell us about you. And I'm going to turn my light on because I'm actually in my office and I realized it gets dark in here at 5 o'clock.
So Nike gives us all these amazing backgrounds. So isn't this one cool? You see the swoosh up here. Which way is that? I'm Michael McSwain. I'm from Shelby, North Carolina. As I said earlier, I studied finance in college, and I was probably, let me validate some of the feelings you all are having. I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. I admire that you all have general direction. I actually came to App as a teaching fellow where I was going to be a teacher because both of my parents are teachers. And I dropped teaching fellows and started to study finance because I realized that there were other things out there in the world. And so I studied finance, but I was super involved in college. I was in ambassadors and club council and different things like that. And similar to Kadima, I actually came to Washington with a leadership class, and we would lobby the Hill for Pell Grants for the UNC system. And I thought DC was awesome. I'm from rural North Carolina. And so I was by all the majesty of DC. I was really, I knew I wanted to break away and get out of rural North Carolina. But I knew cities like New York sort of intimidated me. So DC's like a nice little halfway mark, I feel like, accessible. And so when I graduated, politics was always sort of a hobby for me. And so when I graduated, I applied for several internships. I was rejected from the White House internship and from one of the senators from North Carolina, but I was accepted by Senator Kay Hagan, who was a senator from North Carolina. And I moved up here for like literally a 4-week internship and had, I spoke at graduation. Everybody was coming up to me. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I was like, who knows? I want to validate those feelings for you all, especially in a pandemic, and especially it's hard knowing. And everybody always asks that question of like, what do you want to be? And as Tommy and Kadima have said, it's sort of a journey, and you don't have to have that answer. If you would have asked me 10 years ago if I would be working in government affairs for a Fortune 100 company, I probably would have laughed. So I moved to Washington. I did that internship. The White House actually called all the rejected people and said, hey, we've rolled your application into the fall. Would you still like to be considered? And so it's one fun fact is it's easier to get an internship when it's not the summer in DC because everybody's trying to get an internship in the summer. Hey, try the other terms if you can make that work. And so I got an internship at the White House that fall, which turned into like a consulting gig for about 6 months. And then they offered me a full-time job. And I worked at the White House as an aide to President Obama for about 5 years. And then I came to Nike about 5.5 years ago. And now I manage, similar to Tommy, I know a little bit about a lot of issues. You may think, why in the world does Nike care about the government? But the government and business relationship is very interesting. There are 1,000 things we care about, from this little Nike swoosh is stolen by people every day all over the world. And we use governments to try to protect that through patents and trademarks and things like that. So that's one example of things we care about for the government, but there are a lot. I would say that my biggest sort of advice is exactly what Susan said. Don't come here with any presumptions. Put your head down, get ready to do the work. And that's all I've done to be successful. And I'll also echo what Tommy said. Really lean on your relationships with people like Susan, because that's how you're going to do it. I expect every one of you, if you're really serious about this, to email all 3 of us alumni after this and to do some serious follow-up, because these are your opportunities. And, we're sort of taught like, be self-made. You don't need to ask for help. But let me just tell you, you do. So yeah, I'll stop talking now. So thanks, Susan.
Great. So one of my favorite stories about Michael, some of you may or may not know this, but President Obama visited Boone. Gosh, gosh, I can't even remember when, 2012, 13, like maybe it was 2011, 2012. And my kids were little that day. And I said, so if President Obama came to Boone, where do you think he would go? And they said, the Candy Barrel. And that's where he went because Michael McSwain was in charge of bringing President Obama to Boone. And it was a pretty cool thing for us here. I don't think many presidents have come through Boone. So it's really cool. So
I really wanted him to come to App State, but Secret Service wouldn't sign off on what was Duck Pond Field. You guys don't have that anymore. Or the stadium or the convention center were too big. But yes, that was a fun day.
It was really cool. So here's a question for y'all, and then we'll get back into some of the nuts and bolts. But what is the most memorable experience you've had so far in your career working in DC?
I'll start. So before I worked in the House Agriculture Committee, I worked in the House Radio TV Gallery. And so we oversaw all the reporters, producers for all the major networks that were covering Capitol Hill for their beat. And so one of the best parts about that job was getting to oversee all the big historic events that happened in the Capitol. And one of those things was overseeing the laying in state ceremony for former President George Bush. And I worked an overnight shift for that. And I got to be in the room for not only the ceremony, from them bringing in his casket and the family, but the overnight shift where it was just myself and the guards overseeing him. And it was one of those moments where I thought, I can't believe I get to be in this room and get to be a part of this experience. But professionally, now I would say a tie for that would be the insurrection. So that day we were told, stay home, it's going to be dangerous. But obviously the members had to go in because they had to vote on the Electoral College from each state. So my boss had to go in, but her and my chief were, telling us, avoid the Hill at all costs. Well, my boss ended up, being sheltered in place. And from a communications director standpoint, it was probably one of the most, challenging but rewarding days professionally, because I was on the phone with my boss all night as we strategized what TV appearances she could do while she was still sheltered in place. And I was calling in, through my phone and looping her in on local affiliates, also national news, kind of giving her perspective of what was going on, how we should talk about it when it was still so raw and so fresh. And that was another experience that we still talk about, that, as sad as that day was, getting to be on the phone with her and kind of giving her, talking points and kind of see how she was feeling and putting her out there. And it was hard. I mean, going into those interviews, she said she was afraid that she was going to cry because it was so, like I said, raw and fresh. But, being a part of that was definitely an out-of-body experience.
Thank you.
I can hop in. I feel like, honestly, I've had too many to count, and it's been the little things. I remember when I first got to DC, just seeing a senator was like the greatest thing ever, and then it was one of the biggest moments is when I was an intern for Senator Hagan. Elena Kagan was confirmed to the United States Supreme Court. And it was Sonia Sotomayor, excuse me. So when it's very rare, if you ever visit DC and you go look at in the Senate gallery, you basically go look at an empty room. Many of you have probably done this, and you're like, where are they? Like, what are they doing? And it's very rare for all the senators. Normally, if you are in there with a senator, they're talking to no one. They're just standing in there, like giving a speech, and nobody's paying attention. And that's sort of what they do during debates. But it's very rare that all the senators come and sit in their chairs. They actually are required to do it during impeachment. So we've actually seen it more this time, these last few years than ever. But they all came and sat in their chairs for Sonia Sotomayor's confirmation, and they stand up and vote one by one. And I was actually in the gallery for that. And that was a really cool moment. But I also saw Oprah Winfrey once when I was like a brand new intern, and I that was cool. So, you have all these moments. But I think one of the nice things about being in DC is you're on the step, you're watching history. And that is a really exciting, even if your job doesn't give you a cool moment, you get to be a part of, the big protests, whether good or bad, and the big moments, as Tommy said, that was our community that was attacked. And our workplace, I mean, both of these guys work right there. And I live about 10 blocks from there, and I work right there too. So it's just a wonderful place to be, where there's a lot of history happening. So.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Kadima, can you share?
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit smaller just because I'm fairly new to the Hill. So I haven't really been around as much. And being in COVID, like, we haven't been at work. So it's been really different. But one thing I can say has been really memorable so far is, so I work in the budget office, and that's like essentially working with the appropriated dollars that Senate gives our government agency to do whatever. So we have this big giant document that we submit every year to Congress for them to like review and like go over all these little things. And like, be able to talk about the different programs that we're having so that they can fund them, and like we can get the money and all that good stuff. So that has been probably the most memorable moment, is knowing that this little spreadsheet that I'm working on is going to be like sent off to my, the librarian, who's then going to send it off to Congress, who's then going to have the president look at it and sign it. So that was kind of like a little, like, I kind of fangirled a little bit, just because thinking about how like that tiny piece that I'm working on, whatever narrative I'm writing, or like how I'm putting together these numbers, is actually going to mean something. And that someone is actually going to have to look at this and like, take it into account, and just knowing that like the work that I'm doing is actually matters.
Yeah, that's such an important part and such an important message. I remember a friend of mine who, I think he was his second year working for Senator Dole, and they were trying to get the budget together. They were doing the budget negotiations, and they had, I don't know, like $10 million. And he said, here I am, like 24 years old. I have no experience doing anything but working on the Hill, and I am being entrusted to figure out how our senator is going to spend this money in her district or in her state, which is pretty crazy. So we have people on our panel who are working in communication, who was a poli-sci major here. Michael is working in the private sector, basically a lobbyist, a government like relations liaison, but has to know a little bit about everything from import, export, to just the day-to-day. How do we make sure that regulations in this country don't adversely affect our business? And he was a finance, College of Business major. Kadima was an econ major, so she's doing this major budget work. So I guess what I'd like to make sure everybody knows is there is something for everybody in DC. And often people think, I want an intern on the Hill. There are as many issues, as minutia issues as you can think of. So someone mentioned women, someone mentioned immigration, and someone mentioned environment. I don't know what it is, but I can guarantee you there is some association in DC that's working on climate change issues as they relate to females who are immigrants, guaranteed. There are so many teeny tiny issues, and those are often things where people have opportunities to get a foot in the door, but they don't rise to the top, like interning with Senator Burr or going to intern with Congressman Price. So let me stop right here because I want to make sure that we have time for some questions, and then we'll take maybe 5-9 minutes for questions, and then we'll come back to our panel. So what questions, burning questions, do y'all have, students?
I have a question. What advice do you have to make your application for these internships stand out?
I would say, like, really look at the description. So whatever the job is that they are asking for, like, really dig deep into that and make sure that you have some of that in your resume. So make sure that you highlight certain things that are a part of the job in your resume, and also that, you feel like you align with those things, and also make sure those things are in there, because when they're doing these searches and the recruiters are looking, they're definitely looking at making sure that you fit, like they're looking for these kind of keywords and these kind of buzz things to like be able to pull your application up. And that was kind of like how you bring yourself to the top.
And Kadima, you mentioned that when you applied for the job that you have now, you did it through USA Jobs. And you were like, it's like just throwing it out there with a million people, that you really didn't have a lot of faith that that the system worked, but
Right.
It did work.
I know, it's really surprising, but I always say that USA Jobs is kind of like the black hole of like government positions, because it kind of like sucks in all these applications and like they kind of get lost, because a lot of times when different government agencies are hiring, they usually do look internally first before they start to come out to like external applications. So I always I would do it with like hope, but it was always kind of like, you're not sure whether or not it was really going to find where it was supposed to go. And it was just kind of luck of the draw with me, because I had a senior team lead that was really looking for a specific kind of person. And that had like she was looking for someone that was kind of green. So I hadn't worked in a government agency. Like I'd worked with contractors that worked for government agencies, but I hadn't specifically worked in federal government myself. And my senior lead, after I was hired, told me that she was looking for someone that didn't necessarily have that experience. So it's kind of, and then she also said she noticed that, I went to Appalachian State, and my budget officer, he has a son that went to Appalachian State. So it's kind of like what Tommy was saying earlier, like that connection kind of like brought me in the door. So I would definitely say, don't be discouraged about applying, like do apply and like give it your best effort, but definitely, look at the job description and look at the different things that are in the agency or in the title, and just make sure that, you have some of those things highlighted in your resume as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Kadima just said, but also it kind of goes back to networking, right? So each time I've applied for a job, I try to find out if I know someone in that office or know someone who knows someone in that office and get them to flag it. It always gives me a little bit of peace of mind too going into the process. So I have a little bit of knowledge that I have a leg up. But I also feel like I'm still learning more about resumes, right? So like each time I update it with my whatever current job I have, I always try to make sure I'm hitting the key points. And it's a learning process. But like Kadima said, just making sure that you see the job description and like in a subtle way or not so subtle way, making sure that you have it in your resume or the application. That's good advice. And like I said, just having someone flag it is, huge benefit.
I totally agree with Tommy stole my thunder, but I think that you have to be relentless in that. And I use LinkedIn, and I don't know what the kids are doing these days, but like, because I'm officially old now, but like you know somebody who knows somebody. And so you really need to lean in on that. The only way I got a job at Nike is I sent an email to everybody I know and was like, who knows anybody who ever worked at Nike? I found a guy that I go to church with, knew a lady who went to Nike. I was standing by him at the pew next Sunday, So I think like, don't be afraid to do that and be smart about it. The other thing is like, you have to show up. Susan and her team could probably teach you a master class on like how to fill out your application and have your resume right. But I meet with probably 5 or 6 students a month randomly who reach out to me because Susan or somebody says like, oh, you should talk to Michael. And I always say yes, because Mrs. Obama said, when you climb the ladder, turn around and pull somebody else up. And that's how I got here. So yesterday I met with an app student who was incredibly disappointing to me. And that's not normally the case. And this kid is a leader at app. He was directed to me. He came, I gave him 30 minutes. He came, he didn't have any questions. He just talked about himself the whole time. Then I said, send me your resume. He sent me his resume. My response back to him was, are you sure this is right? Because this looks pretty busted. I didn't say it that way, but like, did the format getting screwed up? And he said, no. And so I haven't really gotten back to him yet to be like, listen, like you got a lot of work to do here. And I probably need to send them to Susan. But needless to say, when you get these meetings, you got to be ready. And you don't get like this kid, he's not going to get a second chance with me. Like, I mean, I'll try to like, work with him and help him, but like he's made his first impression and it wasn't good. And you know, there's redemption for everybody, but you guys have resources. And so when somebody gives you 30 minutes, like, you need to be ready to ask some thoughtful questions, which basically everybody just wants to talk about themselves. So just say, like, what's your story? Or something like that. And then when they ask you for your resume or try to give you a tip, like, you better be ready to like actually be able to deliver on those types of moments, because you know, people can drag you only so far. Your connections can only get you so far. You're going to have to, like, you know, really have the juice once you have your opportunity. So
Thank you.
So here's
I
a
just
bit
want to say real quick that even as I was like figuring everything out in DC and I was in like my last job, and Michael's been a friend for years, but I've still gone to Michael for advice and mentorship. And so always having like that mentor or that friend that you can talk to or that resource is a great benefit. Because like I said, I still go to Michael every now and then to, you know, get advice on what to do.
Well, and
yeah, thank you.
And I go to Tom.
I kind of wanted to point that out, that y'all, no one's really talked about it directly, but the relationships you've made with the people in the offices where you've worked are huge. But the other question I have, and especially for Kadima and, well, for all of y'all, can you get a job or an internship or your foot in the door in DC if you're not physically there? How much harder is it? Or do you do what Kadima did, which is go live with a relative and get on that train and go into the city and take a temp job or a contract job? Can you get a job without physically being there?
Yes, actually, that's like a big perk right now. And I didn't even think about it until my press secretary and I had a meeting with our press intern the other day. And she's still at James Madison University. So she's still at school physically, saving a bunch of money, not living in DC, and is our press intern. So she's able to get that virtual internship experience without having to fork out a bunch of money or wait tables at night like I had to do. So even though, you know, I'm so ready to get out of this pandemic and go back to normal life, it is kind of a nice benefit in this current new modern world of having these virtual internships, because you can be where you are right now and be able to get that experience and get it on your resume.
Yeah, I have a coworker right now who's been with our team since July, and he lives in Philadelphia. So it's definitely possible.
Yeah, that's true. It is a very different world right now. Yeah. Another student question.
I have a question. So let me just start off by saying that I know that I'm willing to start anywhere. Like right now, it has to kind of deal with law because of my major, unfortunately, but that's okay. I've learned a lot so far. But my question is, I'm finding that a lot of like internships, like one for AOC right now is they require like a 500 word at least, I think, writing piece. And so I kind of want to talk about an issue that's going on in Charlotte, which is the tent city. If you don't know what that is, it's just, you know, the pandemic has moved out so much room in the homeless shelters that people are just living in tents all along the freeways of North Carolina. And so I want to talk about that, but I also want to let them know that, like, hey, like, I'm willing to do anything. I am so passionate about this, especially since the insurrection went down. Like, it's kind of just opened my mind up and really made me want to do something about everything that's been going on, because I just feel like someone has to, you know. And if it can be me or like 1,000 people, then like that's fantastic. But like, what are they looking for, I would say, in these writing pieces? Because I know what I want to say, but I feel like it's too much or too little.
Well, I think from my perspective, you should say both of those things. You should say, I'm willing to do everything, and here's this this issue that I really am passionate about. The other thought that came to my head, and this isn't what you asked, but I think when you think about somebody like AOC, she's amazing. She's well known. There are a lot of other really amazing members of Congress that don't have her profile. And you may be you should apply for AOC, and you should, like, maybe you'll be the one. But I would say there's a lot of other members in the Progressive Caucus who caucus with AOC that you should put your applications into their offices as well, because there are a lot of members who will probably give you that same sort of inspiration and make that change, but don't have her platform. And the only reason I say that is I'm sure AOC probably gets like 100 to 1 application ratio than some of the other members of Congress. But like Prima Jayapal, Ayanna Pressley, Cori Bush, I mean, the list goes on of members who share those same ideology as AOC, but it might be easier for you to get in. One of the things I found at the White House is if you apply to the White House office of First Lady or office of Vice President, like these sort of flashy offices, there's a lot more people who apply to those offices. I applied to the scheduling advance office, which a lot of people are probably like, oh, I don't want to do that. And, you know, they never got an internship at the White House. So I think that, you know, try to be strategic. Don't ever sell yourself short, but also be strategic in how you put out these applications. Just with, obviously AOC's on everybody's TV every day, so people know about who she is and apply, but think about some of those other members too.
Yeah, and I'm just having like trouble finding them. Sorry, Tommy. I'm just having trouble finding all these things.
Send me an email and I'll help.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much.
And I want to echo what Michael said too, but also there are a bunch of caucuses that also have internships. So the Progressive Caucus in the House, I think would be fantastic because like Michael said, people think to jump to like apply to the squad, like Ilhan Omar, Rashida, AOC, Cori Bush, but the Progressive Caucus, they're a part of it. And you're part of like the broader messaging for the Progressive Caucus in the House. And you get to network there. You have a whole plethora of members from all across the country who are progressives. But also with House internships, since they are so small compared to Senate, I would also look for like progressive senators that you find that you align yourself with because they do have more opportunities because obviously it's a bigger office. So that's 2 of my little, you know, points there.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question from y'all, and then we'll ask our panelists to make some closing remarks.
I have a question. I know this isn't you guys' like specific area of expertise, but do you have any advice for going into like the international relations and like finding more accessible things in that field?
To be honest, we always joke that foreign affairs is like the top thing that everyone wants to do when they come to DC. My boss, for example, is on appropriations committee. She's got the assignment and she's going to be on the foreign affairs subcommittee. And we always joke like, oh, here's our in on foreign policy. There are so many, groups off the Hill, the committee. I mean, if you're wanting to do international affairs, I mean, there's foreign affairs in the Senate, there's foreign affairs on the House side too. And with committee, they also have internships. So, I mean, there are avenues. There's also think tanks, policy groups when it comes to foreign affairs. But yeah, feel free to reach out and I can give you a list.
Great, thank you.
And Tommy and Kadima, will y'all stick your emails in the chat box too, if you are okay to share? Sorry, Kadima, I cut you off.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say to Peyton, USAID, they have a lot, I don't know if they have a lot of internships, but I know that they have opportunities where they work with different international offices. And I have a friend that actually works for USAID. So I can maybe even see if she knows of anything and be able to share that with you if you reach out to me.
Great, thank you so much.
And I guess one thing I would say, maybe Michael is, well, you could speak, because I was going to say Michael does foreign affairs. He just does it in a different way.
Yeah, one of the angles, like obviously Nike is, we sell, North America is our biggest market, 40%, but we sell 60% of our products globally. We make products all over the world. I have government affairs colleagues who are working with governments everywhere. So I think that you could think about something like that. I also think, Tommy said think tanks. If you don't know what that word means, they're sort of like policy incubator places. So a lot of you said you like policy. So I put the Atlantic Council in there because my wife used to work there, but that's an example of a foreign policy think tank. But you could Google search think tanks and things like that and see a lot of those. But the State Department, USAID is a great one that Kadima mentioned. There's a lot of foreign policy. I think Tommy makes a good point. Like, it's very sexy, so everybody wants to go to those types of opportunities. But I do think that there's a lot of great opportunities, and try to think outside of the box, whether it be think tanks or global companies. There's a lot of companies that are headquartered in another country, but they have a DC presence. That could be an interesting play to get some foreign affairs, international business kinds of experience. So like Lego comes to mind for me. An amazing company that is not a US company, but has obviously a lot of US interest. And I know they have an office in DC. So think about companies like that too. If you're not, so you don't limit yourself to just, obviously I think public service is a great way to go. And I'm always trying to figure out how I'm going to get back into public service too. So, but there's some other options for you to consider.
Great.
Thank you.
So I have also shared Tommy and Kadima and Michael's LinkedIn. And I know Michael specifically mentioned that. I think right now in the pandemic, it's really important to connect with people. And the best way right now to do that is through LinkedIn or, through email. And I'm super glad y'all were all here today. And I know some of you are familiar. I've seen you before. I'm glad you are back. And I put my email in there. I know less because I'm not in DC like I was at one point. I did government relations work for Appalachian, so I was essentially the lobbyist for 6 years. And I also was a director of several large federally funded grants. So I was an advocate because of the work that I did and the students that I worked for. So any way that I can help you, I will. And like I said, we do have a huge alumni network. So if you want to set up a time to follow up with me, I would be happy to do that. But I would like to know words of wisdom from our panelists. And truly, Kadima, you missed this. I did an interview with WASU today, and they said, what's something you're excited about? And I was like, this panel tonight, because I'm going to get to be with 3 alums who are some of my very favorite people I've ever gotten a chance to work with on campus. And I'm just excited about that. So what words of wisdom would you have for our folks? Something you wish you'd known, perhaps?
So I'll go first. My word of wisdom is this process is a long process for you, like career wise. And as Tommy sort of mentioned, I literally was asking people like, can I have a 2-page resume now that I've been working for 10 years? Susan, I'll follow up with you to make sure that's okay. But, I think that you never really arrive. And I also would say, you hear from us all the time, like network, reach out to people. Just so you know, there's going to be a lot of rejection involved with that, or not even rejection, just ignoring. I think that one of the things you need to always remember is like people are busy, and some people like to talk to people more than others. If you reached out to my wife right now and said, hey, do you want to I'm a stranger, do you want to meet up on Zoom? She would say, nope. And that's just more her personality than mine, where I would be willing to just meet with strangers to try to be helpful. That's not good or bad. But I also think that, sometimes people don't look at their LinkedIn inbox, or sometimes their Gmail, you send somebody an email and their kid just had a temper tantrum, So, I think that you always, you can beat yourself up. You can tell yourselves a lot of stories that aren't real. So I think that you just need to say, okay, I'm going to focus on this. And sometimes it's going to work out. And other times, maybe it won't. And that would be okay too. So don't take people not responding to you as rejection. They may just simply be busy and don't have the time at that moment. And I would also encourage you, try again. And, if you reach out to somebody and a month goes by, reach out to them again. And the worst thing they're going to do is ignore you again. And you will have lost nothing. So that would be my advice is, Kadima's story is inspiring to me too, because it does feel a lot of times like you're throwing a rock into the ocean and hoping it just washes back up to your feet. And a lot of times it doesn't. So just be relentless, and you are the person who cares most about your journey. And so it's on you to sort of make that happen. And so we're all here to help when we can.
To echo what Michael said, just be persistent. If you have the drive, like I said, it's going to be hard for a while, possibly, maybe not. But if you're persistent with it and keep it up, I mean, there might even be a week where you land an interview and it might not work out where you don't get the job. But even getting that interview, you realize you're starting to get your foot in the door a little bit more. And that is very motivating, I've found at least. Like I said, I went from being an intern 5 years ago to a communications director for a member I really align with. And that's the other piece of advice too. I found friends that are working for members now that it might not align with politically just to get a job on the Hill. And I promise you it's not worth it because you're putting so many hours into this job that you want to make sure that you believe in the mission of your boss and align politically. But it's fun. Like I said, once you get your foot in the door, you'll realize it was all worth it, I promise.
Oh yeah, definitely echo that. Like, just don't be discouraged, keep going at it. I mean, there was a point where I was in my internship and I thought I hit a wall. I thought that was going to be the job. Like, I was going to be an intern and then they were going to hire me full time and everything was going to come up roses. And they didn't. I was a server at P.F. Chang's living in my aunt's house for about 8 months before I found my actual position. And it just so happened that like the last day of my internship is when I finally got the interview for the full-time role that I took on like later that year. So it's like, just don't stop. And you're your biggest advocate. I would definitely say that.
Also, Kadima, I was a server at P.F. Chang's when I was interning as well. So that's hilarious.
That's funny. Yeah, I was at Tyson's Corner.
I was at Boston.
Learning how to balance that tray, y'all.
Oh yeah.
And you never know who you might meet along the way. So I think the one thing I would say is just to add is don't burn bridges. You never know who that person that maybe you interviewed with someone. And one thing I will say is, like, especially if you're on the Hill, I've been up there with lots of groups doing advocacy work, and they walk out of the office and they're like, I can't stand him. And I'm like, him's staff is all the way down this hall. They all just heard you say that. So just kind of keep your thoughts to yourself and be gracious, and hopefully people will be gracious back to you. And I really do believe that. So anyway, it has been a joy to have Tommy and Kadima and Michael tonight. And if y'all want to stick around for half a second, that'd be great. Students, let me know anything you need. I put some resources in the chat box, but it's just dig, and you will figure it out. And wait, somebody just had a question, another question? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. We will put this out on the Career Meetups recordings. And if you need anything else, just let me know. Or when you need something else, let me know. I look forward to seeing you. Thanks for giving us your time tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.